right, thank you for coming out this morning. We appreciate everybody being here yesterday and today. Today we'll give you some details about the apprehension of the suspect last night, as well as what's happening on campus today and what the status of our community is today. I am going to hand it over first to Chief Bill Yeagley from the CMU Police Department. We have a few different police folks who will speak this morning, a couple of different ones, and we will conclude this morning with President Ross speaking, and then we'll take questions.
Central Michigan University wants to sincerely thank you for being here today, but for us, more importantly, thank you for getting information out that helped us to keep our community safe and to help to keep information flowing the best we could through a very difficult and rapidly unfolding situation. We appreciate your help. Before I get started in earnest here, I just want you to take a look at the different uniforms here. And we have a wonderful history of law enforcement in this community of working hand in hand with all of the agencies you see here. We have the Saginaw Chippewa Tribal Police, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, the Isabella County Sheriff's Department, the Michigan State Police, Mount Pleasant City Police. There were many others that assisted us through the course of this, the FBI, the ATF, Shepherd Police Department, and more. And what for me was the most comforting was that in the...
Do we have tech support on the mic? All right, we'll speak loudly.
I'll speak louder then. Again, just what I really want to say is thank you to our partners. Within a very brief period of time, this group and others in law enforcement came together very rapidly with one purpose: to maintain safety in our communities. And so without them, we would not have been able to respond as quickly and as well as we did do. So I want to thank them and ask you to show your appreciation to them as well. I want to tell you that the danger that our community has experienced over the last 24 hours or so is now over. At 1 o'clock this morning, at about 12:15 this morning, we were able to, the Central Michigan University Police Department received a tip from a train that was going down the tracks. One of the employees of that train, one of the operators of that train, noticed a subject standing out near the railroad tracks at 10 after 12 in the morning. Found that suspicious and called us. Within 2 minutes, CMU police officers were on scene, and within a minute after that had the suspect in custody, which put an end to the threat of violence to our community. So we're very, very pleased that, again, someone in our community got involved, made the phone call, they saw something, they said something, and we were able to respond. It's very difficult for all of us to say that on our campus, 2 people were killed. What makes this, I don't know if worse or better, I guess you have to figure out for yourself, is it was really a domestic issue. It was a mother and a father and a son involved in this initial confrontation that ended up with tragically losing 2 people. And there are a lot of people suffering in that family. But I tell you what, there's a lot of people, faculty and staff and our students and the Mount Pleasant community and people who are watching on TV or following social media. I was on a plane coming back for this, and it was the talk of the plane coming from Florida to Detroit. I just listened to people speaking, and some quite emotionally, about what had just happened here. And so I know there's a lot of people suffering, and our prayers and thoughts go out to all of those folks. I want to back up a couple of days here and tell you where all this started. Our interaction with James Davis Jr. started on Thursday, March 1st, at approximately 9:45. And CMU police have a community policing officer, referred to them. They have an office in our high-rise dormitories, our residence halls. The officers assigned to those have been there. That's their regular shift. That's where they show up and work. They have relationships with the students. They have friendships, and they provide a sense of access as well as safety. And James ran into the office of our community policing officer, very frightened. He said someone was out to hurt him, someone was going to harm him. And the officer calmed him down and tried to gain more information on what was going on. And Mr. Davis was very vague, and he kept talking about somebody had a gun, and the officer said, when did he have a gun? Did you see a gun? And just, again, everything was extremely vague, so we got other officers involved, and eventually we're able to actually get a name of someone we thought might be involved in threatening Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis talked about riding down the elevator in the high-rise with this individual. So we had officers locate the individual, stop the individual, have conversation, actually took him to our department to interview him to see if there was a threat that really did exist. In the meantime, we're talking with Mr. Davis, who is really not making a lot of sense. He's not putting the pieces together for us. He kept talking about the guy who was trying to kill him had a warrant for him for a murder. He had already committed a murder and was wanted for a murder. And that he knows he had a gun. And when we say, how do you know he was going to hurt you if you didn't see a gun? And he was saying things like, it's just a feeling, I just know it. So what we did was our investigation, we were not able to see any risk for anyone. This other person that Mr. Davis identified did not have any pose any risk to Davis or anyone else. We reviewed the video in the elevator, which showed Mr. Davis riding down the elevator with this other person, and they were laughing and appeared certainly to have a good relationship, not one of a threat. The other person had no registered weapon, so we felt comfortable that, and we told Mr. Davis, you know, with just this amount of information, there's really no crime, there's nothing more we're able to do. What can we do to help you feel safe? He said, I'm fine, I'm going home in the morning, so I'll be good, and thanks for your help. So about 1:15, 3 or 4 hours later, our officers are over in the high-rise area dealing with a different issue and see Mr. Davis in the hallway with a number of suitcases and bags. The officers approach him to say, hey, are you all right? What's going on? I thought you were going home tomorrow. Mr. Davis, again, acts in a fashion that isn't reasonable or logical. He was not able to make a lot of sense. So the officers saw his cell phone and asked him to call his parents. So Mr. Davis calls his parents. The officer speaks to the parents over the phone. They explain to the mother what we've observed and what the actions of Mr. Davis have been over the last few hours. The mother also very concerned, saying she and her husband will be coming up to Central immediately, and that the officer said that we had some suspicion it might be drugs. Does he have a drug history? The mother said she too is concerned this could be drugs. So after speaking with her, the officers tell Mr. Davis we need to take him to the hospital to get him checked out because just clearly mentally and he's not making a lot of sense, and the suspicion and some of the behaviors we see suggest there may be drugs involved. So for his benefit, we take him to the people who are best qualified to look at those kinds of symptoms, to measure those things, and to manage those if they in fact are there. So we took Mr. Davis to the hospital and explained what our interaction was with the hospital staff, where Mr. Davis stayed until the following morning, where he was picked up by his parents. Once he was picked up by his parents, they came back to Campbell Hall to load the car up to take him home. Actually, about 15 minutes ago, our investigator briefed me on where we are in our criminal investigation, and there is one witness who stated that Mr. Davis was seen coming from the parking lot into the residence hall with a gun in his hand, and we have video photos of that as well to support that. So just prior to the actual incident, Mr. Davis came into our residence hall with a weapon and went to the 4th floor, where we believe he shot and killed his father and his mother. Mr. Davis then left on foot, He went out out of the building and onto the railroad track and was running north on the railroad track. And it was, we have again a number of video photos that show a progression of moving north along that railroad track. And the last place we could actually put him from the video is around Cherry Street on the railroad track. So at that point, we have all of these folks coming in to assist us and to set up a perimeter and to take care of our communities. Not only are we looking for the suspect so that no one else is injured, we also are trying to protect those folks who are still on campus and in the Mount Pleasant area and help them to be safe. So the last thing I wanted to tell you is we did recover a weapon at the scene, and we had the Michigan State Police Crime Lab spend many hours processing that scene, as well as some other pieces of evidence that we need to take a look at. And so I just want to say that the investigation has many, many more hours and much more in front of it. We are not at all done with this investigation. And so as we work with our city partners, the city detective was involved in this right from the beginning with our detective, the resources from all of these agencies and their expertise, including the FBI, and we're going to continue to move forward in that. What I'd like to do is introduce you to Director Paul Loria from the City Police. When our unified command came together, I think Director Loria can provide some information to you in regards to how we proceeded and what we tried to do to keep folks safe.
Hello, thanks on behalf of the City of Mount Pleasant. I appreciate all of you coming and for the information again that you put out to help us bring this tragic situation to a peaceful end with the apprehension of the suspect. Once the suspect left campus and went into the city's jurisdiction, we had responding officers immediately set up a perimeter. That perimeter was in the neighborhood and area along the railroad tracks in Mill Pond Park. Once that was completed, the unified command with all the responding agencies and resources was put into place at a command center where we started coming up with a plan on how we were going to go and search for the suspect. At that same time, we got a hold of Mount Pleasant Public Schools and asked them to do a lockdown due to the concern of the suspect still being at large. We put out, obviously, social media posts about it, alerting our community, along with utilizing the Code Red system that we use in emergency situations. Once all the incoming resources were coordinated and based on some video evidence in the last location where Mr. Davis was seen, a methodical, slow, and thorough search of Mill Pond Park took place by emergency services team from Isabella County and the Michigan State Police. As the incident extended and it got around to the dismissal time of schools, we had to take that into consideration. A plan was talked about with Mount Pleasant Superintendent Jen Verliger, which allowed the students which allowed parents to come pick up the students with the presence of police officers stationed at the schools in the affected area of the search. As this continued into the evening hours, we regrouped, decided that we were going to no longer hold the perimeter, but put in rotating rolling patrols in the affected area with the use of, or from personnel from the Michigan State Police. And then shortly after midnight, we received the tip from the train company. On behalf of the City of Mount Pleasant and our community, our condolences go out again to the Davis family. As the Director of Public Safety, our community is trying to get back to normal. I ask that everybody respect that. We are safe. This threat of this that existed during this incident. The suspect has been apprehended. Right now, I'll turn it over to Mount Pleasant City Mayor Allison Lentz.
Good morning. Yesterday, our safe community experienced a tragic event. As the mayor of the city of Mount Pleasant, I'm proud and thankful for the incredible response that our law enforcement partners had. These partnerships, which we work to strengthen on a daily basis, are critical to the success in this type of incident. The response from the Mount Pleasant community, including CMU, was outstanding. Thank you to the residents, the school leaders, the businesses in this community for following the requests of law enforcement as they worked around the clock to restore the safety of our community. Your cooperation and support were an amazing example of how in adverse times we can take care of each other. In Mount Pleasant, incidents like this are rare and isolated. As the first step in healing, I encourage everyone to try to return to normal activities. As we look into the future, we must continue to take care of each other, reach out as needed, and grow as a community to keep Mount Pleasant safe. I believe Mr. Ross, President Ross, has a few closing comments.
Good morning. Through a number of many texts and emails yesterday around this event, I've responded to people who reached out to me that I said to them that yesterday was a tough day at Central Michigan University. It was a tough day yesterday. First of all, I want to extend my condolences to the Davis family. They lost two loved family members yesterday in this tragic event. And I want to say that with those deaths yesterday, this campus, this community was traumatized. Our students were in classrooms with their faculty members. There were staff members across this campus in their offices doing their work. As the mayor and the chief indicated, there are people throughout the Mount Pleasant, Isabella County community at work. We were traumatized yesterday. With that, I want to commend our law enforcement officers from all the various agencies, the CMU Police, Mount Pleasant Police, and all the other agencies that came to help. But I also want to commend the faculty and staff of this campus. We read about shooters on campuses across this country and communities. We talk about it. We practice what would happen if it happens here. And never envisioned it could happen at Central Michigan University. We are a safe community. We are a safe campus. But yesterday we demonstrated the ability to deal with the inconceivable, a shooting on our campus. Staff came together. We locked this campus down within minutes of the shooting. We sheltered in place. We protected individuals on our campus. For all the policies and procedures and protocols, we followed those. But for me, through all this tragedy, again, we protected lives. We're grateful for the help that was extended to our campus from the various police agencies, as I mentioned earlier. But we thank God. We thank God that this incident ended quickly and the suspect has been apprehended. As we move forward, we'll examine what happened yesterday. We'll redouble our efforts to continue to make our campus and our community safe. I want to thank everybody who's helped us, and we're not done yet. There were thousands of people on campus yesterday, and they're going to be dealing with this the rest of their lives. The governor told me a story yesterday when he was here. I want to thank the governor too. He stepped up. He phoned me. Our colonel in charge of the Michigan State Police and the governor are on the phone yesterday. They came to our campus community. They brought scores of state policemen to our campus community. And I want to thank the governor publicly for stepping up and assisting Central Michigan University and the Mount Pleasant community. But beyond this incident, it doesn't end with the arrest this morning. Like I said, there were thousands of people on our campus that were sheltered in place yesterday. And they will be dealing with this, many of them, for the rest of their lives. So as we prepare to get through spring break next week and welcome our students back the week after, we're going to redouble our efforts with our counseling center and reaching out. I had a student ask me yesterday, or maybe it was here in a press conference, how do you deal with this trauma? I don't know the answer to that. I'm dealing with it. It's going to be with me. I've encouraged our students who are off on spring break to talk about it, to let those feelings out. We'll provide professional counseling for them as they return to our campus, and not only our students, but faculty and staff. Thank God I thank God it is over, and I pray that we move forward as a peaceful, friendly, welcoming community that we've always been. With that, Sherry, are we done?
We'll take some questions.
We'll take some questions.
So, did you confirm, was it drugs?
Those types of things are part of the ongoing criminal investigation, and so we're not able to respond to those at this point. But as soon as we can, we'll make all information public.
Okay, is he in the hospital now?
Yes. He's in the hospital now.
Why? Is he injured?
No, well, it was apparent when we arrested him, appeared to be hypothermic and, again, not making a lot of sense. And so, again, to make sure that we get him to the place where they can help him, it's medical folk. And so he is in custody, under guard at a hospital.
Do we know where the gun
Yes,
belonged
sir.
to? Was the gun his father's, and did it somehow become unholstered, or how did he come in possession of that?
What we know for sure is that the gun was registered to his father, and that we saw that for sure he came from the parking lot into our residence hall with the gun, and the father was upstairs at that time. So we can make a lot of assumptions, but I'm not going to make those assumptions. What I can tell you for sure, the gun came from outside in the parking lot with him through the building.
Which hospital was he at?
McLaren? Which hospital is he at?
McLaren, I believe.
McLaren?
Was it his father's service weapon?
I don't know. All I can tell you is the gun was registered in his father's name.
Did police search the area where Davis was actually located? Along the tracks?
Yes, they did. At the time of the arrest or following the shooting?
Well, afterwards, like before he was actually down there.
Yes, there was extensive some searches done on the railroad tracks as well of where he was seated fleeing north of campus.
How far do you think he got away from the university residence?
We're not really certain of that.
But it seems like he was found pretty close to where the search had begun, about 16 hours prior. Any idea what he did for 16 hours without actually going anywhere?
We don't have any hard facts on that, and we need to wait as part of the criminal investigation to interview the individual, and maybe he will give us some information.
Chief,
Yeah.
where specifically, I know that some people might not be familiar with that area, where specifically along the tracks there was he found?
Just north of Bellows, in the roadway, just off of the railroad tracks.
By Northwestern Apartments?
Yes.
Also, can you explain a little bit more further as to why the parents were upstairs and he was downstairs? And you guys determined how that all played out?
Well, from some initial witness statements as well as video, it simply was they were packing up for spring break. And so, as most of us do when we pick our kids up from college, I may get a load and take it down to the car, and from what we've seen and heard, that's what it appeared was going on.
Were his siblings present, or were his siblings there?
No.
There were students on the fourth floor of Campbell for quite a while. When were they released from that shelter?
That fourth floor area was cleared probably within 15, 20 minutes when they did a room-by-room search.
So approximately what time last night?
It was probably about 20 to 30 minutes after the shooting. When they cleared the rooms and then interviewed people on that floor.
What was the suspect's demeanor when police finally were able to come into contact with him? I understand he was arrested without incident.
Yeah, he clearly was cold, and life was not making sense to him at that moment.
Did he realize what he'd done earlier in the day?
I don't know what he realized. We did not interview him. There was no questions asked other than, are you okay?
Were there any indication that he received any assistance during the time that he was on the loose?
At this point, there's nothing to suggest that.
So the gun was registered
inside of the dorm room or inside of the hallway, and how many shots were fired upon him?
The shots were in the dorm room, and because of the ongoing investigation, I'm not going to talk about the numbers at this point.
So the gun was registered to Davis Sr., correct?
That's correct.
And Davis Jr. went out into the parking lot, grabbed it, came back in, and
What
committed the deed. Was the weapon allowed on campus at this point because Davis Sr. It was an officer? Like, is that a violation at all of like our campus weapons policy, or?
It is a violation of our weapons policy. You're not to have a weapon on campus unless you are active law enforcement or receive a special permission that doesn't exist. So
because Davis Sr. was an officer in Illinois, does that transfer at all to CMU?
No,
or okay,
it does
so
not.
he should not have
It's
had
not
it.
automatic.
Okay.
Do we know the train company that called in the tip?
I don't, but I'm sure we can get that information if you'd like it.
Have there been any previous incidences or, I don't know, engagements with Davis prior to Thursday?
No, one of the things that this community does extremely well is people, when they see a student or faculty, anyone on this campus struggling with something, there's a care team, and we get a lot of information online or phone calls, people just concerned about others. And a whole group of professionals come together from a variety of professions here on campus, and they try to figure out, get information to see how we can help that individual. And Mr. Davis was not ever reported or part of that. He had had no interaction that we're aware of with in any negative fashion with anybody prior to this incident.
For President Ross, you said that we're going to be redoubling counseling efforts following spring break. I know that counseling efforts have been a very vocal want for a lot of students on campus. What exactly do you mean by redoubling efforts? Can you explain a little bit more?
Well, currently we are staffed at a certain level within our counseling center with professional counselors, psychologists, and psychiatrists. I've already been in contact with fellow presidents in the community, and we will be, in order to expedite counseling here in CMU the week after spring break, we'll be utilizing some of the counselors from other universities in the area, and we plan to add additional staff as we move forward to CMU staff.
Do you know how long the additional counseling help from outside universities will last? Is it just the week after spring break, or is that until?
We will start it the week after spring break. I think the number of students, faculty, and staff reaching out will help us determine how long, and frankly, the counseling load of the outside counselors will help dictate that, but we'll move expeditiously.
Chief, can you talk about what's next as far as when he might be arraigned, when he'll be lodged in Isabella County Jail, kind of what's next?
What's next is, right now we're relying on the medical staff to tell us when it's appropriate medically. And at that point, he will be lodged at the Isabella County Jail. And I don't know the answers to the whens.
Chief, I have one more on the search, and in no way do I mean to make light of the search. I know it was an exhaustive effort. I mean, were you surprised to find him so close to where he had taken off from? Because I know you guys had searched that area. It's almost hard to believe that area had been combed over hours and hours, and then he just kind of pops up there. I mean, were you surprised at how that played out?
No, I mean, I've been doing this for 40 years. And what I know is the minute I think I've got it figured out is when I'm really wrong. And so really what this is an individual who is very intent on avoiding the police. And what we do is we saturate the area with as many law enforcement or resources as we can, tracking dogs, helicopters, and so forth. And what that guarantees is we increase our likelihood of finding that individual. There are no guarantees. I don't know if he hid someplace and we missed him. I don't know if he wasn't in that area when we searched it and doubled back. I don't know is the answer. But no, it doesn't surprise me. This is how these things unfold.
President Ross, it sounds like, so if I'm hearing it properly, it sounds like there was a witness who saw him carrying a gun, and then there was video that you could clearly see a gun. So it sounds like he wasn't hiding the weapon as he entered this freshman dorm room. So door? Because from what I understand, these dorms, there's usually somebody monitoring the entrance and exits, right? It's not just a free-for-all that anybody walks in or out. Have you examined who was monitoring that door and who missed the gun?
We were in the throes of students leaving for spring break,
Yeah.
normal activity. There's staff on working within the residential halls. I just learned just before this press conference about that video. The police will examine it. The investigation will help determine who saw what and when, and we'll go forward.
And I know it's hard to catch everything, but then when you think like, well, if it was that visible, you could see it in a grainy video and that a witness saw it, like, it seems like maybe some more diligence by, it's scary that we're at this time, right? Like, but we have to keep covering so many incidents like these. Is that something that you're going to look at moving forward? Is policies manning the door of these dorm rooms?
As I mentioned earlier, I believe that we've been vigilant over the years with our policies and our practices on our campus, with our tabletop and active exercises and working with the other police
And yet
agencies.
the gun got into a dorm room.
Apparently. We will take a look.
Do we know if any of Davis's roommates were present?
I just like to comment first. I'll come back to you. That's all right. So remember, this was not a normal classroom day. This is spring break, move out. And so, all security is a trade-off of taking your freedom or giving your freedoms up to keep you safe. And so we don't dictate those. We try to work with our community to make those reasonable. And so we can take a look at that. We need to look at this. We need to examine everything that happened. But it is not unusual or surprising that during spring break move out, that side doors are open, that parents are going in and out, and there are doors that aren't possible to monitor during those things, which create a convenience for our students and their family. So I'm not suggesting that going forward we may not do something different. I don't know. But this is not unusual or surprising.
Do we know anything about if roommates were present at the time, if anybody else was in the room during the shooting or saw anything additional?
I need to ask you to wait on that until we get some more interviews conducted, and then be happy to share that with you.
All right, I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. Appreciate your time. I appreciate what you've done as journalists and the respect that you've given CMU, the way that you have worked with us and been a part of our family. Thank you for coming today.